Well, hi there. I'm Sally Perkins, and I have a dual career. I have been a teacher over a span of 37 years. 20 years of that was in kindergarten. And I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I have a private practice. And so that I've been doing for 33 years. So I decided to retire so that I could just have one job instead of two. But I'm not so sure that's wonderful, and I really love being with the kids in a classroom, and so I go volunteer on Fridays in the classroom every week just so I can have my kid fix. So it's very nice to be with all of you. Welcome. The handout that you have from me has the words on the top that say, what your child can expect in a kindergarten classroom. And if you just grab that little packet, I'm not going over any of the first page verbally with you because I figure probably a lot of these things a lot of you will know already, and if you don't know them already, you can read them, and they're fairly self-explanatory. If you do have questions about any of this first page, feel free to put a little asterisk or star. And you can't hear me very well? Okay, sorry, I'm sorry.
You want a hand hold?
Sure, I'll do that. So I would just encourage you to read, at your convenience, that first page over the course of the next hour and a half. And if you have questions about any of the things on that first page, just put a little asterisk, and we'll make room at the end of all three of the presentations for you to ask those questions, and we'll come back to that. So the presentation, my main part of the presentation, is page 2 of that little packet. And I'm going to just go through it. I wasn't even going to print it all out, and then I decided, well, maybe the quotes would be something that people would like to have at the end of all of it. So the things in bold print are all quotes from well-known people, and you can read those. The things in plain print, ordinary print, are the things that I'm going to be covering and talking about with you and elaborating on. So the first quote says, education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself. And it's from John Dewey. So I would like to talk a little bit about a developmental perspective of kindergarten. This is not my perspective just as a teacher. Some of it is from the perception of a teacher. But this is a lot from the perception of a mental health specialist working with young children. So although I will tell you that my work in the classroom was very influenced by that, I would never have said these things to parents in my classroom. I would have been covering the things on page 1, and the things that you will hear from Kim and Ann are the other things I would have been covering in the classroom. So I just wanted to be clear about that. This is just my perspective as a developmental specialist. So 5-year-old children are still living close to the unconscious. So what that means is that primarily they're living in a world that is not yet awake completely. They're not asleep, I don't mean to say that. They're absorbing everything, and in fact, the first 3 years of their life, they have the first three months of their life, and then again at the first 3 years of their life, they have learned in a pattern-like way the things that will affect them and be their core for the rest of their lives. So that's not to say that the next 15 years aren't going to matter, but their primary development is somewhat established in the first 3 years of life. So they're still kind of in a little bit of a dream-like state. They still believe in magic. They still love stories that engage them with fantasy, with the difference between reality and fantasy. They like walking that line. And they still are experiencing the world through their 5 senses. So, you know, anything that you engage them with touch, taste, sound, smell, or hearing are the things that will stay with them the most significantly at that point of development. And in fact, sensory memory is the longest form of memory that people have. So they learn about the world with very few defenses at the age of 5. Now that's primarily if they've come from a very nurturing environment that's safe and supportive and caring, and that's the audience I'm speaking to, or you wouldn't be here. So for the most part, children are very open and they don't have a lot of defenses, like the same kind of defenses adults have. They don't have a lot of self-talk that knows how to make sense out of somebody that's unkind to them. That would be an example. So they're very open to life. They're very open with their heart. They feel easily. They're focused on fairness, unlike any other age. They understand that really well. And those kinds of things appeal to them and are good things to approach difficulties with, an understanding of those things like fairness. The next quote says, "The most influential factor in parenting is the unlived life of the parent." And that's from Carl Jung. And he's a well-known Swiss psychiatrist who's long since been deceased, but whose work remains very influential in the field of psychology. What that basically means is the parts of your own life experience that perhaps didn't get explored much, or were yearnings that didn't get actualized, become really influential factors in parenting. In fact, from his perspective, they're the most influential factors of parenting. And an example I can give is the young child who didn't feel like he got a chance to explore being an athlete, you know, much in his family. There just wasn't the support for that for a wide variety of reasons. And as an adult has a young child of his own, and he's really bent on making sure that young child is very athletic, because he doesn't really get that his own yearnings not being met are now part of how he's projecting important things onto his child. So that being said, there's really good things about that, and of course you can see that there's probably red flags, you know, to be careful of in that. So an important thing for parents to do with young children is to make sure that they have a leash on their own unlived life. So if you feel charged about a certain thing, going a certain way, ask yourself that question, you know, reflect on that in your own life to see if there's something about your own life that's driving this versus the life of your child. So I thought we would do a little exercise. It's kind of a game, sort of. And I would like you just to think for a moment, and you can keep right on eating if you'd like, of the earliest memory that you have of being in school. So if you just ponder for a minute, like a meditation a little bit, what is the earliest memory you have? It could be a preschool memory. Maybe it's a memory in kindergarten. See if you can go back that far to think of one small snippet that you remember about your experience. And with that memory, think about the feeling that you had. It might be a good memory, and you can associate it with good feelings. It might not be a good memory. So think about the feeling that you would associate with that experience, with that memory. And then with whoever you're sitting near or next to, feel free to turn around if you want to include a table behind you. I'd like you to share for about 3 minutes what that memory is and what the feeling is. So go ahead. My hunch is that many of you remembered something about what you experienced. And, you know, to really underline, children learn primarily at this stage of development through their feeling life. They will not remember the 3 properties of matter that they learned in kindergarten and how they learned them. So they won't remember how they learned about solids, liquids, and gases. They will remember how they felt in the classroom, what it was like for them to have their teacher interact with them or their friends. They will remember that. It's not to say that content isn't important. It's massively important. But it's to put that in perspective. The next quote says, "The most influential of all educational factors is the conversation in a child's home." Children need to experience something that is often referred to in mental health as optimal frustration in order to grow and develop in capacity. Adults need to learn that way too, by the way. The example I'm going to give you is the baby, who you've all had, or you probably wouldn't be here either, who is about 4 to 5 months old on their tummy and not quite crawling yet, but who is starting to perch up on their little knees and rock back and forth to reach for the toy that is right in front of them. They can't quite crawl, and they can reach, but they sort of fall flat on their tummy when they reach. And so they try really hard to reach, and they scoot a little bit, and they keep trying. And at 5 to 6 months, that is perfect that they can't reach that toy, because they're going to keep trying. That's called optimal frustration. When they're ready to do that thing, but they have to be given the chance to struggle just a little bit to accomplish that task. And then they'll push off on their knees in the right way and throw their body a little bit forward, and they learn that they can grab the toy. And they keep doing that until then they're crawling. So optimal frustration is what motivates a person to learn the next thing. If you took the 2-month-old baby and you put them on their tummy on the floor with the toy in the same place, you might have a 2-month-old that could see it and that would really like it, but that does not yet have the developmental skills to get to it and reach it and play with it. And if they really want it bad, then you'll have a child that's just inconsolably crying. It is not optimal frustration, it's too much frustration. And in kindergarten teachers really walk a very fine line with that every day. Rest assured that although there may be times when you feel like the frustration is too much, you need to really watch and listen with the concern of the best advocate, and see what the teacher does about that. Because a teacher's job is in part to create circumstances that produce some optimal frustration, and then instruction, and then practice. That's how learning happens. So academically, I think that's fairly kind of clear to see. And experts at it like him and Anne really know how to do that really well. Psychosocially, that's harder to see. Some children come from big families where they've had to be part of the sibling group and they've had to learn how to negotiate and compromise and share and take turns and all those things. Some children have learned that in preschool environments. Some children have not had that opportunity yet. You know, they have been maybe the only child and they were kept home and a lot of time and energy given to them, but they haven't quite, done the learning part of a social group. And so that frustration may come more quickly to them than it would a different child from a different circumstance. It may appear easy to some children and very difficult for your own child, depending on their background. And in the kindergarten environment, that is the focus psychosocially for the year, is to learn how to become a part of a group. So that brings us to the next quote, which is, the only person who is educated is the one who has learned how to learn and change. Carl Rogers wrote that, talked about that, and he was a humanistic psychologist that is also deceased, but his work is very powerful work. Kindergarten is a culture of learning how to learn, not just about academic things, but about social interactions, about routines and rules, and learning about patterns of the ways things are done, how supplies are handled, how working groups together work and take turns talking. And in project-based learning environments, they really focus a lot on that. And I think both of our other teachers are from those kinds of environments. So they'll probably share more about that with you. But they have to learn how to be good negotiators and diplomats. And so they have to know how to go into groups and out of groups and negotiate and, bargain. And it's a very sophisticated skill, but they're very young at it, very new at it. And so it oftentimes is where there is frustration. And a really good place to address that frustration is sometimes in the school environment. There are teachers who do class meetings or who have, strategies for letting people talk about what they liked about the day or what was hard for them about the day. But it would be important to remember that your child will be one of 25 or 26, 24 children. So the amount of time to reflect per child would take up the entire day if it was going to be really impactful for each individual child. So it's best if that reflection piece happens at home. And it often happens the best at bedtime. When you pick up your child and you say, "How was your day?" they're going to say, "Fine." And when you say, "What did you do?" they're going to say, "Not much." Or, "I don't know." And it doesn't matter how much teachers go over at the end of the day, "Oh, we did this today and this and this and this and this," to remind them about the day. They will still be on to the next moment, which is the moment they open the door and walk out is the next moment. So it's really nice to come back to that at bedtime, to say, "Tell me one thing that was really special about your day." So you're not asking them, "What did you do?" You're asking them to reflect on their experience. And then you can say, "Tell me if there was any moment in your day that was hard for you or frustrating for you. And what was that about?" And then you can ask questions and help a child learn how to process those difficult moments. And you as parents are going to be the strongest, most influential energy about that kind of conversation, which really has to do more with the quote above that. that last one. It's a culture in kindergarten that implies great change. Our schedule changes all the time, and as much as we like to do routines and structures that seem to work well with young children, those are frequently interrupted by special events and presenters and all kinds of things. A day where the library computers are down or whatever it might be. There's constant change in kindergarten, constant visitors, constant volunteers, constant special projects. So, they have to learn how to sort of live with that and live with the diversity of that, which is usually kind of a different thing for children to take in, because it's all mixed in with what they're doing academically. So it's a challenge. It's a real challenge for them. This is the grade where children learn about limits and boundaries that will affect them for the rest of their educational life. And I think it's the hardest lesson for people, regardless of their age, to learn, for all of us, is to learn about limits and boundaries. And that may sound kind of odd, because socially mature people understand that you don't stand up in a room and just shout out. And, we know some of these really basic things. But what happens as an adult, when we think we have a really, really, really good friend that we're just connected to, and then all of a sudden they're disappointing to us in some way. A lot of people just turn around and walk away from a relationship that injures them badly. But there are opportunities to learn that some people have limitations, that not every relationship will meet every need. And so, they have to learn what they can and can't expect from certain people and still remain connected. And those are things that I see a lot of people who really struggle with that particular skill. And so I think those are lifelong learning lessons, but learning about limits, whether they're personal or structural, environmental, are really hard to do. So kids in kindergarten have the first 6 weeks a lot of tears. You could expect that. You can expect a lot of desire to do more things. You can expect a lot of, oh, we didn't get to play today and I want to play. You can expect a lot of frustration at times. And that is so a teacher can help them learn the environment and the structure and the limits and the boundaries that will provide them the most amount of success and the greatest amount of opportunity. Young teachers don't always know this, especially if they've not worked with this grade level. And they don't start out the year establishing really good limits and boundaries because they think the kids are so cute and they just really, they don't know what it will look like in 3 months if they don't get to that task. And having done this for many years, I think we could probably all agree that, the first 6 weeks you may feel is a tough time. Please talk to teachers about that, because that's part of the fun of teaching. From my perspective, helping parents and kids through that rough time is really part of what I loved doing. It's a time of transition and a time of learning for everybody. And once they get that part, they are set free in a way that is truly remarkable. Once they know the lay of the land, it's quite amazing what they do. The last quote is my favorite quote on the whole page. It says, "One looks back with appreciation to the brilliant teachers, but with gratitude to those who touched our human feelings. The curriculum is so much necessary raw material, but warmth is the vital element for a growing plant and for the soul of a child." And I don't think there's any teacher that works with kindergarten children that doesn't say that to themselves 15 times a day. Rest assured, it was up on my wall when I taught kindergarten for 20 years. So I know these two ladies, and I've been so deeply moved by how committed they are to young children, and so I look forward to having the opportunity to pass I was going to say the baton, but it's really the microphone, to Kim Floyd next, and she's a teacher in Yountville, and she'll talk more about her experience.
I'm going to try without this. So what's a teacher without a bag of tricks? So I have a bag of tricks to show you tonight. But I'd like to let you know a little bit about myself. I have been teaching kindergarten long enough that one of my students is here tonight. What a phenomenon, but what an honor, too, to have one of my students here. I'm a mom. I have 4 kids, and I like to say I have one of each. My oldest is a stepson, and he did not like school. I have another son, and he is average. There is nothing, he wasn't a gifted child, he is just your average great kid. He's the kind of kid that every parent wants to have. My daughter is a gate kid. Tell you what, she's the one who's taken us for a ride. And then my youngest one turned out to have a learning disability. So suddenly a new part of my life was opened up. And with each of my children, I was still in the classroom, but they all changed the way I taught. Now tonight, the gift that I have is I get to talk to you about reading and literacy, and it's probably my favorite part of the classroom. If you've been around very long, you might be familiar with this book. This is Jim Trelease, and years ago he was the champion in education. And if you were a mom, or you were a dad, or you were a teacher, you were reading this book. I highly recommend it, but it's a little bit cerebral. When you read through this, he's going to tell you what to read at which grade level and why to read that at each grade level. So it's very specific. He's going to say, this is how you read to your preschooler. This is how you read to your kindergartner. This is what you read when you get to primary school. This is what you don't want to read to your children. But what was even more meaningful to me was a book that was a sale book. I found this on the back table, special value. And if I were going to recommend one book for you to read to help your child be super successful as a kindergarten reader, it would be this one. It's called Reading is Magic. This book by itself really transformed my teaching of reading. Now I've put 3 kindergarten literacy tasks up here, and I'm going to talk about each one of them. It used to be in the olden days we'd talk about reading, we'd talk about writing, and we'd talk about spelling. Now we call it kindergarten literacy, and it's broken into these 3 different parts. Oral language, that's when your kids are talking. Phonemic awareness, that's when they're learning how to break words into pieces. And you do have my handout, and if you've had a chance to look at it, it looks really weird. We'll talk about it in a little bit and why it looks like that if you haven't been able to read through it yet. And then finally, print awareness. But what I'd like to point out, the quote at the bottom by Mem Fox, who is the writer of this book, and she's not from the United States, but I did get to see her in real life. What an amazing, amazing speaker. And she says, reading means the ability to make sense out of print. It is not one's ability to sound out print. I want you to hear that. Reading is making sense. It's not when your child's going ka, ah, t. It's making sense. So in my bag of tricks, one of the things that I've learned is that you can teach a child everything they need to know about life through wonderful little books. And just like Sally said, little inroads that you have, that time that you have at night when you're putting your child to bed, taking a few minutes to read to them or asking them the question, what did your teacher read at school today, can be a very powerful tool for you as parents. I don't know if you've seen this. It's very cute. It's from Copperfield's. It's got great pictures, and I'm not going to go in there. But truly, the literacy that you do with your children, the reading that you do with your children is very powerful. So let's go to the next slide. Now I'm going to start with oral language. And when I had the chance to do my master's degree, I learned about the empty jar. This is like your child. And this is what Mem Fox talks about in Reading Magic. And if you are taking the time at night to read to your children, how many of you read to your kids? And if you do you read them one book? You read them one? That would be like dropping a coin into their bank. And that's really good. And if you're reading them 2 books at night, We're going to get, you get 50 cents. Let's add that to your child's word bank. And if you are reading 3 books at night, or if you're slowing down and savoring that book at night, that's like adding even more money to that bank. Oral language is a predictor of academic success. Your child's ability to have a big, strong, wonderful vocabulary is going to make school easier. So as I was driving in, I was thinking about a lesson, the itsy bitsy spider. And how many of you have taught that to your kids? There you go. And we can go like this, right? Itsy bitsy spider. So if your child starts kindergarten and they know the word spider and they know that rhyme, when the teacher says to them, arachnid, your child doesn't have to slow down and go, what? Because spider's already there. It's laid the foundation so that when a bigger word like arachnid comes along, it fits to something that's already there. Now, the oral language that your children use with you, when they're able to respond to you and they're able to say to you what they did at school today, or when they're able to describe to you that spider or that bumblebee or that kid that sat next to them in school, you're getting a window into their heart. One of my most favorite quotes says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So when you are taking that time and listening very carefully to a child, and just like Sally said, if they come home and they're not happy, you need to listen. But if they're coming home and they're talking about the arachnid, or they're talking about, did you know that a bumblebee has a thorax and an abdomen? Now, if they've already been told by you, stomach and head and shoulders and knees and toes, when the teacher at school introduces thorax or abdomen, it's not as difficult for your children. Oral language is a predictor of their academic success. Now, as you're reading to your children, it's as though you are filling that bank. Now, Memfox tells a story about picking up a book and handing it to a child, and the little child was able to read that book all by itself, and the child was 4. And so she went to the parent and she said, what did you do to help your child be a reader so quickly? And the mom said, I didn't do anything. She read to her child. She read to her child. She read to her child. Which means that instead of putting those coins in one at a time, that was a parent who was able to fill the child's word bank to the point that the child became so familiar with the relationship of words, with oral language, with hearing, and with the relationships that were happening with those books, that when it came time to do the other 2 skills that we're going to look at in a minute, it became automatic. Another thing I have in here, and I think we can go ahead and flip. Well, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about this. This book came from my dad. When he was little, this is the book that his mom used to read to him. And when he handed this off to me, it was like a treasure. And he looked at me and goes, you have to give it back. I'm like, oh, you don't know. I'm a kindergarten teacher. Are you kidding? I mean, you're not ever going to get this back. This book is symbolic of the relationship of reading. In a little bit, you'll see a slide that has a quote about relationships. Reading is not necessarily phonemic awareness. Teaching your child to read is a relationship. Every book that you read is connecting you to your child. So if I were to take this book out and I were to read, I'm going to show you Pokey Little Puppy who is on the back. That story was one of my earliest memories. That's the book my mom used to read to me. Did I learn vocabulary in Pokey Little Puppy? You better believe it, because Pokey Little Puppy doesn't get where he's supposed to be, and he's a disobedient little dog. It wasn't so much the Pokey that mattered. It was that my mom took the time to read that story to me. It's the side-by-side relationship that says to your child, you are so important. I'm going to sit down with you. We're going to talk about what's on that page. I'm going to ask you if you know what a tiger or a bear or an umbrella is. Early literacy is about the relationship that you're building with your child. And these are a tool. So this is as powerful as a tool as going to Disneyland. You know, we take our kids to Disneyland because it's fun. Because when you're there, you're having a great time together and you're building the relationship, but we cannot afford Disneyland every day. So instead, taking them on experiences through powerful children's books is going to begin to build the road to literacy. Now you see up here on this slide, it says kids who cannot, let me get that off the floor. Kids who cannot recognize the fact that 2 words rhyme have a hard time learning to read. Rhymers will be readers. It is that simple. If children know 8 rhymes by heart by the time they're 4 years old, they're usually among the best readers. Let that sink in. One of the things that will be missing from many classrooms these days are those old-fashioned nursery rhymes. Sally, I'm sure you probably know, because those of us who've been around for a while still embed those. But if there were a secret, if there were one thing that you could go home tonight and do, is to begin to find one rhyme, and every night you take your child to bed and you, whether it's Itsy Bitsy Spider, whether it's Little Miss Muffet, whether it's Hush Little Baby, embedding those rhymes. It's not so much just about the rhyme, it's the cadence of the words. A lot of nursery rhymes have really sophisticated language in them, like Little Miss Muffet, who sat on her. Tuffet is a sophisticated piece of vocabulary. It begins to build in there the oral vocabulary that builds a predictor for academic success. If we were doing Itsy Bitsy Spider, he comes down the water. Spout, again, is a fancier word for a child than to say go to the faucet. And again, you are building that beautiful language in there just by teaching them nursery rhymes. So if there were one piece that you were taking home tonight, take the time to give your child 8 nursery rhymes before the first day of school. If your child already knows those 8 rhymes, when they get to school and they're exposed to the kind of writing that's on the right-hand side of this, they're looking at sight words. Sight words are not the same thing as phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness means that children are able to take a word and pull it apart and put it back together. They're able to hear a beginning sound, a middle sound, and an ending sound. So you can help me. What if I say this word to you? K-up. Can you figure out what I'm trying to say? K-up. Well, I'm pulling it apart. Listen again. K-up. That's phonemic awareness. If you are playing with your child and your child is setting the table, you might say to them, can you go get me a f or k fork? Where are the, oh wait, it's not a zapkin. What's that thing again that I put on the kitchen table? It's not a zapkin, it's a, what's that? It's a napkin. As you change and twist those little simple words around and begin to do oral vocabulary play, children are going to be, it's going to be much more natural when you're laying in these academic tasks at school. Sight words, which are words like the one here, up there, see, and the, you can't sound those out. Children learn them by sight. They just have to memorize it. They don't make sense. They don't fit any sort of patterns. They're ridiculous and they're hard. And you just learn them by looking at them. But words that children can sound out and blend, that is phonemic awareness. Teaching them early rhymes and playing those silly games with them will help. So transposing the beginnings of sounds, it's not a zerer, it's the mirror. Or stretching out a word like, can you go find your sh-oohs? I bet your children would figure out what their sh-oohs are, and they can go get them. And that will begin to train their ears to hear those sounds when they need to become early writers. You go ahead and flip. Print awareness is different than oral language. It's different than phonemic awareness. It is one of the components of early reading. Print awareness consists of all those things on that list. So if you're reading to your child, and I don't suggest this first. The first read of anything, you read it just because you love it. You love it, you love it, you love it, and you read it and you read it and you read it because, oh my goodness, this is the land of the lost. But every once in a while, you can call attention to print. You can turn a page and you can say to your child, where do you think this book starts? And if they're pointing to the bottom, you know that you've got to help them understand, no, it's going to start at the top. Because learning from top to bottom and learning to read from left to right is not a natural skill. People don't read like that in Japan. So going left to right and top to bottom is the American way to read. And you need to show your children that. You need to say, no, we start at the top. You can find, so that would be pointing out letters. Can you find the letter that's in your name? So that's a great one for kids. If they know how to write their name and they can just find the letters on the page that go with their name. Looking for words on a page, you would be surprised. As kindergarten teachers, it's not unusual for us to say, can you find the words on the page? And guess what? Kids will point to this. So that simple question, where are the words? Where are the pictures? What do you see and what do you notice in the picture? Pictures are part of the print. It's part of print awareness because when they're not reading the print, they're reading the pictures. And that matters. How many times have you looked at a map or you've looked for the symbol before you've actually read the words? I do that all the time. So I drive. Also then, helping your children become familiar with favorite authors. Teachers are notorious for this, reading all of Eric Carle, all of Mo Williams, all of Dr. Seuss. Helping your child find a genre that you are reading with them is a very powerful tool of helping them understand print awareness because they begin to see the pattern in particular writers. Helping your child know the difference between the author and the illustrator. It's wonderful to point out books that have the same author and illustrator, but then also showing them the differences and helping them make connections. We talked about where does print begin and end, and then always I love to ask the question, what else do you notice? If you were to show that to your child, what else do you notice? Well, there are no pictures. Why are there no pictures? If I read it to you, there are pictures. They're up here. And those are pretty powerful pictures. Those are part of literacy. That picture in their brain is their comprehension. It's their measure. When I was telling you the story that had the walking fish, was that the picture they were getting in their head? If they don't have the oral language to bring that back and to give you the comprehension that they really got it, that they could really retell the story, there's a missing link there. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth is speaking. So if you've read to them and they can't retell you the story, read it again. Read it again, because you'd be surprised. It's some of the familiar stories, like Three Little Pigs. Tell me the story of Three Little Pigs. Oftentimes, they'll leave out one of the pigs. They'll leave out the wolf. They'll change the ending. Go ahead and flip it. This is my final quote. I loved the way Sally brought in quotes. You are here tonight because you want to raise champion readers. You want to have champion writers, and you want your children to be successful in math and social skills at school. So I've given you one strategy. One strategy is that I want you to teach your kids nursery rhymes. That's really important. The other one is fill up their vocabulary bank. Read to them and create a relationship with your books and your child. But the third one is from Einstein, and I intentionally put his name really tiny on the bottom because wouldn't it be great if our kids were as brilliant as Einstein? And it simply says, if you want your child to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. And if you want your child to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales. What it really is saying is establish those relationships, read to them, and give them powerful vocabularies. If you can't take them to that place in real life, take them there with a book. Okay. Do you want me to clean my mess up? Okay. Absolutely, no problem. And I think I showed all of them.
I did. Okay. So my name is Ann Garner. I teach at Napa Junction in American Canyon. And I've been there for 5 years. I was at Carneros for 10 years before that, and all in kindergarten. So, and actually, Sally, when she asked you to remember something, I don't remember a whole lot from school stuff, but one of the things I remember the best ties in with Kim's also. The book that one of the books my mother read me, I still have. It's my very favorite book. It's called Kangaroo and Kangaroo. You can't get it anymore. And it's got all the rhymes, you know, kangaroo and kangaroo, just like me and just like you, except that they were kangaroo and hadn't very much to do but sit around collecting stuff because they thought we might not have enough. So it's a beautiful story. I love it. Anyway, the original hoarders, actually. So anyway, so I'm going to talk to you about math and some math foundations for your kids. First, I'd like you to think about why is math important? Think about that for a minute. Why is it important? What do we need it for? Any ideas?
Everything.
Everything. Okay, more specific.
Finances.
Finance.
How fast to drive. You name it.
Okay, yeah, we need it for everything, right? We have to know how to deal with numbers, in particular. I have shapes up there too because kindergartners have to deal with shapes all the time. But why is it important? Because we use it every single day, right? We have to have those foundations in math for the kids. Go ahead. So one of the big ones that we work on, probably the biggest one in kindergarten, is number sense. It's figuring out everything from what are those numbers to how do I count things, how many are there, how many more lemons are there than oranges, how many more forks are there than, do I have more pennies or do I have more quarters, all of those kinds of questions are about number sense and how are you gonna make sense of that with your kids. The biggest thing that I've noticed with incoming kindergartners is that quite often the parents will say, yes, they know their numbers. They know how to count. They can go in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if the numbers are in order, they can recognize them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But they don't recognize them out of order. So they need to know. So you can play games with it, just like you can with reading and looking for words and looking for letters. And you can play games with numbers while you're out and about. What number is that? How many is that? Can you show me with your fingers? So play games with it. Do things at home. Like, I want you to set the table. How many forks do we need? How many knives do we need? How many do we have all together once we've set the table? How much silverware do we have? You can play all those kind of number games with the kids to get them started. Use what you have. That's why I put those pictures. Those all came from my house. Use what you have. Doesn't have to be something out of the ordinary. It doesn't have to be, it can be as simple as, I have a jar of money. Sort it for me. So we're gonna count them and see how much we have. So that's pretty straightforward and easy to do with your kids on a regular basis. Measurement and geometry is the other thing that we get into a lot in kindergarten. The basic shapes, I included some of the three-dimensional shapes like the cube and the cylinder because they do need to start learning those in kindergarten. Again, you can relate those to things that they see all the time. This picture is from my students in science lab at my school. And one of the things they were doing was figuring out how to build things with Legos. So they were given a specific job. And part of that was figuring out what shapes they needed to make it work. And they had to build bridges. Again, what did they need to put together to get across from one table to the other? So yeah, you can, again, do all sorts of asking questions with your kids. What shape is that notebook? What shape is the Lego? What shape is this? So there's all sorts of ways you can do that with things you have in your house already to help them practice those shapes. So spatial relations, this one's kind of a big one, but it's thinking about, this is part of also related to number sense. It's part of the, how many more, who's closer to this, like I put up here, how many kids, are there more kids or computers? Who's near the sink? Who's far away? Who's to my left? Who's to my right? All those kind of questions in spatial relations of the kids, where are they? And the language of math is that more or less, more than, less than, equal to. How many do you have? So again, things that you can work with games you can play with your kids to start thinking about those numbers and putting them together. Oh, no. Okay, I think so. I don't know if it's gonna, my students made a video, an iMovie for the preschoolers and the TKs at my school to help them learn what they need to know for coming to kindergarten. So this is from a kindergarten perspective. The kindergartners came up with what they thought the little kids need to know coming into kindergarten. So they made the video. I'm hoping it's gonna work. They didn't leave us oh, it's over here. I don't know about the sound. That was my one problem once I got it to actually turn on, which was the first problem. So we may have to use the microphone to make it loud enough for you guys to hear them. So they decided they needed to show them how to go through the lunch line in the cafeteria. So I thought that was an important skill.
Anne did this as part of a project-based learning class process. And if you're not familiar with project-based learning, what happens in project-based learning is that teachers pose a question to children, and children are supposed to solve it. So it's a problem. The problem is we have new kinders coming, and we need to figure out what do you think they need to know to solve the problem. So kids will do what do you know? What do you think we need to know? And then how do we communicate that back to an audience? So this is what's called an authentic product.
And in this case, the preschools and the TKs wrote us letters as a class that their teachers transcribed, and they brought them to us and read them to us and said, this is what we want to know. What do we need to know when we come to kindergarten? So my kids took that and went, okay, what do we think they need to know? What is the most important things for coming into kindergarten? That would have made it easier for us if we knew. So, and we brainstormed a list, and then they decided who was going to do what. They got to put a little sticky with their name on it. Which one do I want to show? So, and some of them were the whole class, like this one. Yeah, they're really quiet, sorry. This was modeling good listening. Michaela is doing the good listening.
You see a fidget?
Yeah, you can see the fidgets in the back, so you can see the good listening versus the, yeah. And they're talking, Tiara was talking back there, but it's impossible to hear them on here, sorry.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, this one they know is really important, keeping home toys at home, because in my class, if you bring toys to school and you're playing with them during class, they go to toy jail.
Me too.
And at the beginning of the year, I'm really nice and I'll give it back at the end of the day. Then I get to where I'm like, maybe, in October when we have conferences, your parents can pick them up. And after October, they stay in toy jail until June. Sorry. If it's your jacket, I'll give it back to you.
Yeah.
But if it's a toy, yeah, you're not supposed to bring it, so. So yeah, Christopher is showing toy jail. If you bring it, it's going to go there.
Wow, it's full. My toy jail's full.
Yeah. They think you need to know some letters too when you come in, like the ones in your name. So Yvette's showing the ones from her name. She was very shy to do that one. And Bealey and Kingston are showing counting and how to write your numbers to 10. While we were making this, we did a lot of cutting. So we would show the whole clip that they had filmed, and then they'd tell me what parts we should get rid of. Like, do we need to show Kingston writing all of his numbers to 10, or is that going to be too long? Let's, cut out the center part, and then walking in line. And you can see the ones that are going like this. That's the quiet coyote. So they're.
Okay, quiet coyotes for the hallway time.
And there's me, quiet coyotes. Because when we go by the other classrooms, they're working. Anna's back there tiptoeing.
I know, they're so cute. They're so 5.
Yeah, exactly. We're still having fun here. And you'll see actually the handout that I made for you is the one that has just a few things that you could actually work on with your kids this summer. The top one is writing your name with a capital at the beginning and lowercase for the rest of the letters. A lot of kids start out writing their names with all capital letters, and it's a hard habit to break. And it's one we have to break before they go to first grade, because the first grade teachers are really they need to be able to do it the other way. So we work on it a lot. So they're a little backwards. Why? So these guys are showing being safe on the playground. And then what happens when somebody falls down. I help them up.
That's so cute.
And then she says, "Are you okay?" Check on them, make sure they're all right. And these two decided you need to know how to open your snacks by yourself.
That's a really big deal.
It is a huge deal. And never give up. Justin was trying really hard. It was really hard to open that cheese, and he just kept going.
Yes.
And he finally got
I'm
it.
so glad.
There you go.
Push all the way down.
Opening the office door is very difficult. And that's one of the things the principal comes into our room and says, one of the things I think that you should know when you come to kindergarten is how to open the door to the office so you're not out there like trying to get in and somebody has to get up and let you in.
And where does it hurt? On your elbow? Bloody? Oh, yeah. She's talking to somebody right now, so hang on for a minute. And when she's ready, you can really talk to her.
And how to talk to them in the office. A lot of the kids in kindergarten will walk into the office and they'll stand there and they won't say anything. Yeah, my bathroom
That was quick.
kids were being a little silly in there. Yeah, they were. They designed that. They're like, we want to stand in a line. So they're showing the appropriate way to use the technology in the classroom.
How long did it take them to produce this?
We did this project for about 3 weeks. So that included the little kids coming in with their questions and my class brainstorming the list and then figuring out how we were making the videos and who was doing which ones, and then taking the videos apart and deciding what needed to be there and what didn't. Yeah, it took us a while. But it was fun. They had a great time doing this one. This is probably one of the shorter projects that we do. We're doing project-based learning, and I think this one is the shortest out of all of the ones we do. So this is what we were talking about with that beginning of the year, we have to teach the procedures. That includes things like the computer lab, and like the iPads. How do you use them? How do you put them away properly? So the computer lab is, you got to turn all the screens off, turn off the monitor, hang up your headphones, push in your chair, leave it nice for the next group. That's all procedures that we teach in kindergarten. So this was part of the cleanup because when we do activities where they're all working on different things, they have a cleanup time, and then the other part is the choice time activities, and they have a chance to clean those, to show you how to clean those up too. These are projects they worked on together, so they're showing that we worked on animal habitats. And they made a roller coaster, all sorts of different things for one of our other units. He remembered this is another set of procedures, so you can see there's a lot of things that we have to teach at the beginning, like Sally said, of how to be at school and what we need to do. So when you go to the library, how do we check out books?
Look at her earmuffs. Well, we'll be here for a little bit longer, and with that, we'd like to excuse you, I guess.